Hello and welcome to GamePass Gaming. I'm your host Phlapp, and as always, in the co-hosting hot seat tonight, we are joined by Puxley. Hello, Pux. How are you, my friend?
I am very well, thank you, Phlapp. How are you?
Yes, all good, all good. It's been a bit of a strange news week, isn't it? It's kind of been dribs and drabs and bits and bobs going on. Nothing earth-shattering like we've had in the past. But what it does mean is we're 1 week closer to next gen. So that's always a good feeling. That's always a good thing.
Just over 2 weeks to go, right? So
oh yeah,
the hype is slowly building more and more.
Absolutely. So, we got what have we got? Well, we've actually got another 3 podcasts ourselves because we've obviously got the next 2 weekends, and we're doing a next gen Eve podcast with some special guests, some community members that are joining us for that one, just to help build the hype, help try and get us to sleep that night, and sort of cheer in the next generation if we can. Joining us tonight, as always, regular panel member, very, very welcome guest. Please welcome VJ. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Phlapp. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me back on the show again this week. And,
no problem. How many is this? It must be your umpteenth one, surely.
Yeah, I just don't take these things for granted. I'm a bit of the old generation, I'm afraid. So yeah.
Well, talking about coming back for more, we're joined by SX2 Scott again. Hello. How the devil are you?
Hello there, Phlapp. Thank you very much for having us again. Second appearance today. Really appreciate the chance to come back on and chat with everyone. I hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, well, hello to the chat. We've had some lively chat already. I think I was talking to people in the chat about 20 minutes before the show actually started. So, hello, chat. So let's do some quick shouts. I've welcomed some people in the chat, so I'll try and do the ones that I've missed. So, Fun Speculation, always good to have you here, my friend. You are one of our gatekeepers. We've got that's a new one. Me297035. That's a new one. Hello, me. Leon Creckles, always good to see you. Pong Soul, you're in every chat that I ever see, my friend. You and VJ actually. Wakanda XNT, thank you. She's no elite. Oh my goodness me, we've got so many. Joe Bailey, got some new names in the chat. Lethal Popper, thank you all for being here. Really excited for tonight's show. But before we get into our first topic, let's just do a very quick round of what we've actually been up to this week. So we'll start with you, Scott, if that's okay. What have you been playing this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you remember when I was on a fortnight ago, I was in the middle of playing Doom 2016.
Oh yeah.
This week I have actually ended up completing that game finally. Really, really enjoyed that game actually more than I probably expected. Alongside sort of the normal multiplayer games that I play with my friends like Rocket League, Apex Legends. Last time I was on as well, you actually showed off some Titanfall 2 footage, if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
That made me realize that I didn't actually end up completing that game. I played an awful lot of the multiplayer, so I've actually just picked that up. I played a couple of hours out a little bit earlier today. I'm probably about halfway through, so that's what I'm getting into. And then I think Dishonored 2 is next on the list after that.
Oh, nice. I never got on with Dishonored, either of the Dishonoreds, to be honest. I mean, I quite like the look of, is it Deathloop? I actually quite like the look of that, but it's more the sort of art style that I like about that. But did you play Dishonored 1?
I didn't play the first one, actually, so I may have to go back to that one first. But when, obviously, the whole Bethesda news broke, and there was a lot of talk about the games that obviously in the future probably going to be exclusive to Xbox, and Dishonored was one of the games that came up from a lot of people that was kind of like an underrated game of this generation. So I made sure I downloaded that so I could check it out. But Doom was first. I was going to play Doom Eternal, but then they announced the Series X update, so I thought I'll hold off on that one. I'll play Dishonored 2 and then get Doom Eternal on the Series X.
Don't blame you. It makes me wonder if we're going to see a few of these sort of backwards compatible Bethesda titles get the Series X treatment, as it were, now that they're all under the same sort of family. But excellent. VJ, are you still on your Switch, my friend?
No, spot painting and decorating this week, I'm afraid. So,
okay.
So, yeah. Well, let's leave it there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I won't push any further. Pucks, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I did a tiny bit of Rocket League early in the week. Outside of that, I've actually jumped into an indie title called Katana Zero. You may have heard of.
Yep.
Which, if you haven't played it much, until I was in the chat, I highly recommend it. Originally, I thought it was just a bit of a hack and slash pixel art game, and I thought this was all right. And then before I know it, the story actually gets quite deep, and there's pretty good vulgar language in it. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's quite it's all sorts of adult themes in it. It's pretty good actually.
That's quite up my street. I know we try and keep it quite clean on the podcast, but outside of the podcast, yeah, I don't mind a good swear. as well, to be fair.
But the only thing I got disappointed with, one of my small gripes I did have with Game Pass actually, was that not all games, especially the smaller indie ones, don't all have cross-save support. Because I originally started playing through cloud gaming on my phone during like work breaks in the week, and I thought,
which is essentially an Xbox, I guess.
Yeah, and then jumped on the PC, and then no cross-save support. And strangely, there's also no achievements on the PC version either, which disappointed me a little bit.
Well, that is surprising because I know that some of the PC games obviously have their own set of achievements, and even if you play the same game on either Xbox and PC, you get all of those achievements kind of twice almost.
Yeah, and I just said in the chat, I believe someone's asking if Katana Zero is on Game Pass, and yes, it is on console and PC on Game Pass. So if you want to jump into some Katana Zero, then it's right there for you.
Excellent. What sort of game is it? Is it a sort of a side scroller?
Yeah, it's a 2D. I'll call it a hack and slash, but it's got like a kind of like a time control element to it in a way, like you slow down time, and it's all kind of. But that particular element is kind of deeply embedded into what the whole story is about, which is actually really interesting when it starts to open up.
Oh, cool.
So you kind of play like the first 3 levels, and they feel pretty similar. And then after that, the story kind of takes a turn, and it's like, oh wow, this is actually more of a serious game than I thought it was, in a good way. Like I love the story; it was really good, and it kind of ends on a nice cliffhanger. So I'm hoping that there's actually going to be a sequel.
Well, that's a good plug. Yeah, everyone should be downloading it then.
And I think it was all made by one person as well, so that kind of makes it all the more impressive. I think it took them 6 years of development, I believe, for a single guy.
There's more of these sort of single-person developer studios out there than we realise, isn't there? There's loads of them.
Yeah, there's more than I think a lot of people account for. But yeah, I love playing those little games. It's a good effort for all of these devs that do work on their own in their spare time, usually putting these things together. So yeah, good on them. I highly recommend it.
Excellent. Well, let's welcome to the show Clownz. Hello, my friend. No problems. Obviously, you said you might be a little bit late, but thankfully you're here. How are you, my friend? All good?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And I'm so sorry, man, about being a little bit late here. Is my audio okay? I noticed somebody in the thing says some audio issues.
No, we're all good. We're all good. Oh, is there? I didn't notice that. Where does it say that? I'll have a quick look through.
In the private chat.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Scott is. Okay, that's not a problem. What have you been playing this week? What have you been up to?
I've been playing some Minecraft Dungeons.
Oh, okay. What, the DLCs or the base game?
DLCs.
How you getting on with that? I'm enjoying that?
Yeah, I love it.
I've not really picked up the DLCs much. I played the base game, but I've actually been playing Nier Automata, which is what we have on the screen right now. And it's I don't know, for anyone that's played it, they'll know exactly what I'm about to say, but it's a very, very peculiar game because it kind of doesn't really know what it is in the first hour because at first it's a top-down shooter, and then it turns into sort of a twin-stick shooter, and then it turns into a side-scroller, and then it turns into a hack-and-slash game, and then it ends up being this huge open-world game. It's a very peculiar game. But actually, it's quite fun. It's a lot of fun to play, actually. But definitely check it out. It's on Game Pass. Every game that I put on our videos and on our podcast are all on Game Pass. So if you're new to this, definitely worth checking out. So let's crack straight into the first topic, shall we? Xbox Series S. This seems to have everyone kind of fired up because obviously this is, it was Microsoft's worst kept secret pretty much this whole launch. And many have been touting it as the sort of Microsoft's Trojan horse in the fact that obviously it being a cheaper model, it will actually turn up in a lot more homes. But the strange thing is, I mean, the commentary around the specs when it first kind of landed, there was lots of speculation around whether it would hold back the rest of the generation and some sort of fun poked at it and stuff. But it actually seems like the specs of this thing is actually much better than even probably Microsoft was sort of touting at the time because we're getting Gears of War 5 and the Master Chief Collection on the Series S running at 120 frames a second, which is pretty fantastic. But they also recently reported that the Tourist on the Series S is going to run at a native 4K. Now, you know, Microsoft and most of the press have been pushing this as a sort of a 1080/1440p type machine. And here we have an indie game running a native 4K. And obviously for the price point, $300 or £250, that's pretty phenomenal. And I remember when we had Indie Gamer on, I asked, you know, would the Series S be an absolutely perfect sort of console for indie gamers? Because, you know, let's face it, they don't all push the hardware limits to the max. But that being the case, there's lots of overhead for them to be able to push things like a native 4K and things like that. So let's just do a quick round of what we make of the Series S, because I was really surprised with the bang for buck and how cheap it was, to be honest. And our second topic is actually going to be talking about the GamePass Stick. So we'll try and steer clear of that in this topic if we can. But we'll go to you first, Scott. Oh no, Scott's not there. Let's just bring him into the chat. Are you back, Scott?
I am. I'm back.
Can you hear me?
My apologies. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Did you hear what I was saying?
I did. I caught the last 30 seconds or so.
Excellent. Well, I know you were quite quite vocal about the Series S and showed it quite a lot of love, really. So what did you make of the Series S when it was first sort of announced, and the power sort of bang to buck ratio? Yeah,
the Series S is quite an interesting thing, because even Phil Spencer said himself was the worst kept secret in the business at the time, and we kind of knew everything about it at the point that it got officially announced. I mean, even the official announcement was leaked. That's how bad it got for Microsoft. So nothing really surprised me about the announcement of the Series X.
Series S.
Sorry, the Series S. Apologies, Phlapp. Thank you very much. I think the thing that surprised me most is maybe some of the stuff that's come out a little bit more recently. We've seen things like Gears 5 running 120 FPS on a $300, £250 machine. And I think a lot of people were skeptical of Microsoft's pitch, which was it's essentially Series X at 1440p. It offers everything else the same. I think people still are skeptical at this point, but I think everything that's been shown so far, and the tourist you mentioned there, I think the Falconeer is also a good example where the Falconeer has modes up to 120 frames per second as well. It's shown that it's a ridiculously capable machine for such a small price, but also just a small form factor. They've obviously got a lot of power into that little box.
It is very impressive, and I know the design side of things kind of, not only was the narrative around the power and the price, but obviously the design was quite striking as well. But what was your take on it, VJ? I don't know if we've kind of had this conversation specifically around the Series S.
Yeah, it's a strange one for me. It's not... Okay, so let's just take it from the top. It's a strange one for me because it's not something I've even sort of considered purchasing, especially when I saw the memory storage capacity. And I was watching Moore's Law. I don't know if you watched that channel, but he just really straight talk, and he said, look, longer term, it's a 1080 machine. Hopefully it can retain 60 FPS, which is fine, right? Microsoft's not, boasting it's going to do this, it's going to do this. It's not a Series X. And I'm just kind of curious to see how it's going to cope with Unreal Engine 5 games and the features that brings with it, especially with third-person action adventure games, and so on and so forth. So I'm kind of keeping a close eye on it. It's not something I'm absolute focused on purchasing. And I think, like, when I look at the technical and the performance and storage perspective, I don't know, sometimes the PS4, the PS5, I don't have a PS5 on order or anything like that, but it just seems like suddenly my mind's like torn between, okay, you've got these two systems, there's $100 difference, it's only $100, right? I know $100 can be a lot of money for a lot of people, and I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, shape or form. And especially sort of like if you're on the PS4 ecosystem already and a light user, and that's what I mean by that is if, sort of you're playing the content, which you ask light users and they say, yeah, it's FIFA, Call of Duty, Fortnite, PUBG, and maybe one other exotic game, right? So, so if your intentions are to casually enjoy Game Pass, which, let's be honest, it's probably a huge segment of the market, if not by far the largest, then I can see the Series X. Sorry, I do beg your pardon. The Series S being your go-to.
I do that all the time. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
And I just haven't had enough tea to lubricate my vocal cords.
Someone get him a tea. Someone get him a tea.
and then I guess it's pretty irrelevant what you think of it technically. Xbox fans are going to say it's great. Well, what else are they going to say, right? But I don't know anyone in the real world outside of enthusiasts who want to purchase the S, and most would like to adopt the new Series X, right? It's just from my sort of narrow field of experience, right? Everyone may have something different to say on that. I haven't even seen a tweet, to be honest with you, for that anyone like professing or flashing their receipt confirming a Series S purchase, and even sort of proclaiming it's like, you know, the best day they're looking forward to. The only stories that I've been rumored to hear is Clownz obviously being robbed of an X by a baby with a loose rat in one hand and a warm bottle of milk in the other. But
True story.
Microsoft's overall strategy is to harness and grow subscriptions, since they don't know what the future holds in terms of all the variables and unknowns, and thus there's no absolute certainty as how everything will play out. They would have built models in order to help them to sort of determine outcomes and projections, but every company, every corporation, even us, right, when we go out for the day, have our best laid plans, right? I'm going to grab a coffee here, grab a lunch there, grab my dinner there, blah, blah, blah. And thus what I mean is that they're always subject to a change in unforeseen ways, right? The Xbox plan is very much like the Striker shotgun, which it's sort of with its wide shot, you know, the one in Resident Evil 4, in terms of a wide blanket approach, whether it's going to be the X, the S, the rumored V, PC, xCloud, and this other stick stuff we're going to discuss later. I think they're going to observe and see what works and what doesn't, all whilst marketing dresses up this current scenario as multiple points of entry across for Game Pass. You can get there any way you want. You don't just need to, you know, take the M1 and get stuck in traffic. But then Microsoft have the resources, right? They have the resources to experiment and then further down the line refine and sort of develop their approach. And as they say, let's see what happens. So I'm sorry if that was a bit of a long answer.
Yeah, anyway. No, completely. In fact, I'm going to come back to a part. I'm going to come back to a part of your answer, because we actually have a live interactive poll on Twitter as we speak. So chat. If you're on your PC or you're able to just quickly dive over Twitter, there's a poll on there specifically for you guys, and it's basically whether you're getting a Series S or not, or whether you're getting an X or you're not. Have a quick look at the poll and let us know what you're getting, because that will hopefully answer VJ's question to a certain degree.
Cool. Thanks.
And yeah, no, it'd be good to see. It would be good to see what the chat's doing with sort of S or X or both. But yeah, it does seem like Microsoft. I'll come to you, Clownz, if that's okay. It seems like Microsoft learned quite a lot out of this generation by having a 2-tier system. So obviously they had the Xbox One OG, the VCR type one, and then that kind of got upgraded slightly to the Xbox One S. And then obviously the pros came along, the Xbox One X. And it seems like Microsoft have a bit like VJ was saying, they've observed that kind of 2-tier system, and it's obviously worked, because they've absolutely doubled down on it, and they've kind of pushed the top end even higher, and they've made the lower end even cheaper, bang for buck side of things. Is this sort of thing going to continue with Microsoft? I mean, where could Microsoft go with the price for the Series S? Because it is dirt cheap as it is. I mean, can the price of this in 2 years' time go down, or what can they do with the Series? The Series S.
Are you coming to me on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first, I really want to talk about the Series S, because unfortunately, I was one of those people that got stuck with that pre-order, as VJ alluded to.
Yeah, tell us about that, actually. Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, man, this is, Chad, I'm sorry if you heard this story, but you can feel my pain every time I tell it. So, I got to GameStop early. Like, I think it was like 7 or 8 a.m., and there was like maybe 5 or 6 people in front of me. And I didn't think the kids counting, you know? There was like a toddler, a baby. Like, when I say a toddler, I mean like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and then a baby like in a car seat playing with little baby toys like the stars, and sucking on a pacifier, getting their diaper changed, you know, things like that. And so I'm standing in line, manager comes out, basically tells everybody, he counts the line, tells everybody, you know, how many Series X's he has, how many Series S's he has. So I'm kind of excited about it, because, you know, from my count, I should have had a Series X. So I'm standing there and I'm waiting, you know, the day's going great. 8 o'clock turns to 9 o'clock, and then this guy in front of me, I call him, I think I keep calling him Billy Bob, because he had like a chair with him, like a lawn chair. He could have had like a beer with him and everything too, but he was sitting there in line in front of me, and his buddy pulls up, and his buddy is like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man? Oh, man, thanks for holding my spot." And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You didn't hold his spot. And I was like, you just got here. You're going to get him back in line. And the guy's like, No, he can hold my spot. He can hold my spot. I'm like, no, you weren't here. He can't hold your spot. He's like, well, I told him I was on my way. Like, I had issues with my kid. I was like, I'm sorry about your kid, but you're in the back of the line, pal. I was like, otherwise we're going to have a little issue. So this guy, like, you know, he kind of understood. He saw me tweeting on Twitter, and I guess he follows, like, you know, Iron Lords and King David and everybody else, and everybody saw my tweets going live. And the kid changed around. I was like, oh man, I don't want you to have an aneurysm. I'm looking at Twitter or something, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, it's all good. He's like, oh, I see you tweeting. I was like, yeah, because I'm pissed. So the kid's like, all right, I don't want to get you upset. You know, I feel bad. So I'd be upset too if I were you. So he's like, if the Series X stops at me, I'm going to step out of line. You know, I'll make sure you get it. I was like, okay, cool. That works with me. So I thought everything was all taken care of. I thought, you know, all right, that was the worst that could happen. I was like, phew, this is over with, you know. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a screeching lady in a minivan.
Jesus,
and
really?
Yes. And she's running after she parks the car with a wallet and cash, and she hands it to this kid with a ponytail. I'll call him Pony Boy. So she hands it to Pony Boy, and then she steps in line. And the kid in front of
you.
Yeah, in front of me and in front of somebody else. So the two guys in front of me are like, whoa, what's going on here? This is, like, is this a family? Because there's only one per household kind of thing, you know? And, you know, I said something to her. I said, you can't just butt in front of everybody. I was like, that's kind of rude. I was like, you know, you weren't here. We're all here waiting since, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock. Some guys since 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, you're not just going to come in front of the line. She's like, oh, I had to bring him his wallet and his cash. So I'm looking over at Pony Boy, right? And I'm looking, and I see that he has his black Saturn over there parked. He drove 3 kids in a black Saturn with no license, no wallet, and no cash. And he's been waiting there since 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So I was like, so he drove the kids here with no license and all? And she's like, well, that's why I brought his wallet. I was like, well, if you're his wife, it's only, you know, so many per household, so you're not gonna get an extra one anyway. She's like, no, I'm getting 2. I was like, no, not if you're a family. She's like, well, I'm not a family. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not a family? She's like, we're not family. We don't live together. His address on his ID says something different. I was like, so you just randomly walked in his house with no keys and just took his wallet and cash and was like, hey, I'm going to go bring it to my friend because I'm just going to break in his house because he didn't have his wallet on him. And it turned into like a little bit of issue, and the guys in front of me like kind of agreed with me, like the 2 guys, and you know, it was like a little petty thing back and forth between me and her. And the manager comes out, and the manager starts like handing out the tickets and whatnot, the order. And he hands like to her. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I was like, she's not getting any. She's like with him, and she gave him his wallet and everything. And he's like, yeah, she did. But you got a problem with it? Because she ain't my wife, and she don't live with me. I was like, yeah, I got a problem with it. I was like, what is her right to be in the line? Like, if she's not related to you, not your wife, she can't just come butt in front of everybody, right? That's what I said.
Yeah.
And then he goes, her 6-month-old baby's in line in the car seat. I was like, you mean Goo Gaga's in line? And he's like, yeah, that's her baby. I'm like, so she let you drive her baby with no license, no wallet, all the way over here, and sit in line with a complete stranger that's not related, and she had to bust down your door to get your wallet? And the manager kind of starts laughing because he knows where I'm getting at with this. And unfortunately, because they had different addresses on their IDs, the little baby in line stole my Series X. And I got a Series S pre-ordered, but I'm going to switch that over anyway to a Series X on launch day. I know they're going to have more Series X's, so I'm just going to do that. But man, I was so angry, and I'm one of those guys that got stuck with a Series S, and I'm a hardcore fan. I should have a Series X. It is just not fair. Not fair at all.
Well, to be honest, you make everyone that had headache by ordering stuff online sound like it was an absolute breeze. Wow. God,
Yeah.
yes, I would have been pissed as well, if I'm honest. So,
yeah, and like the kid wanted to, the pony boy like wanted to fight, but if I would have threw the first punch, I would have gotten in trouble. So obviously, I wasn't going to do that because if I would have went to jail, I would have got no console, and that wasn't worth it. I wanted a console, you know, at least.
So okay, well that's a fair point. So you kind of ended up with a Series S by default. How do you feel about the Series S after what you've heard about it and things like that in the sort of in the media?
Oh, I think the Series S is really built for more like a casual market. I think it's like an entry-level point of hardware for people that want consoles, but don't necessarily want to pay for the power of the Series X or, you know, pay for a better performing console. And that makes sense to me. It's just like a game machine to hook up to your TV in your living room, have fun with your friends, get Game Pass on it, you know, download a game, delete it, get another game kind of thing. And the price point's perfect. I mean, I think Microsoft really did that intentionally to try to lower the bars as much as possible, but keeping it relevant to next generation so that they knew that we are living in a COVID economy, like, you know, an economy that's like kind of tanking because of all the quarantines, people losing their jobs, people can't go back to work kind of stuff. And they see all this, so they want to put something out that they can make it, you know, a little bit cheaper and families can afford it. And I get it. So it's great for those kind of families, you know, that want to get something for their kids for Christmas, but couldn't afford the Series X. Great. It's great for the casual market that still want console hardware, that don't want to play on a PC or play on their phones. And it's great for people that just want to get into a service like Game Pass and they don't really care about getting physical discs. You know, they just want to play on the go, play digitally. It's great for all that. And a lot of people still to this day haven't upgraded their 1080p TVs to 4K. I know all the hardcore obviously has, but there's a lot of casuals out there that are still probably playing on their 1080p TVs. So to them, what's the real big difference if, you know, they're not going to be graphically looking for changes, or, you know, they're not necessarily mesmerized by graphics. I mean, it's great for those people.
I think it's an awesome piece of kit, and like I say, you know, I think a bit like VJ said, I think Microsoft have looked at what they did during the Xbox One generation with this, you know, the One S and the One X, and just sort of saw the kind of the tiered difference between them, and absolutely doubled down on that. And like you say, it's fantastic. And as we've always said, you know, it's going to be for the parents that's got a child, perhaps even more than one child, that wants their own consoles and don't necessarily have a 4K TV in the bedroom. We've said that for a little while. But Pux, the chat's been quite lively, and we've got the results of the poll in, so we can furnish VJ with the question he posed.
Yeah, so I've got the poll in front of me as well, and 35 votes so far, and 77.1% say, nah, I'm just going to get a Series X. But 0% say just the Series S only for me, which I think is not unexpected.
So out of 34 people, no one is getting a Series S only.
35, yeah. And then but 22.9% are saying they're going to get both, which I think is interesting. But then I've actually seen some of these comments in the chat as well about what people are tending to get. So a lot of people are, from what I can see in the chat, or for those that are buying the X and the S, and this makes perfect sense to me, is that the X is going to be your kind of main living room machine that's connected to your 4K TV and whatever. And then your Series S is going to be either in child's bedroom or in a spare bedroom upstairs connected to a smaller TV. Because I don't, you know, I think I like to think I'm correct for the most part here when I say that most people probably don't have a 4K TV in a bedroom and downstairs. Yeah, I mean, there might well be a number of people in the chat which do, but I think the large majority of people probably don't do that. But to answer your question as well, it's been a bit of a roundabout since when you initially posted it, but I'm kind of in agreement with what VJ was saying, really, and what Clownz as well, in that I think the Series S is a fantastic proposition and a very cheap entry point into the Xbox ecosystem for those that either haven't dabbled in it before, or again for families who are wanting to get young children, or, you know, even teenagers, you know, just people who aren't into gaming themselves, maybe can't afford it, and this is a way you can get into the ecosystem. Of course, the only downside, not having a disc drive and stuff, if you've got a back catalogue of Xbox 360 discs or original Xbox discs on you, then unfortunately you can't jump into those. But equally, there's nothing. I mean, if you have an Ultimate subscription, I believe, you still qualify for the Xbox Games with Gold, which quite often has, I think, not only Xbox One, but still has Xbox 360 titles as well. So, and I think there's even been a few instances of that Games with Gold where I think there has been original Xbox titles as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually really nice and good of Microsoft to offer that. I mean, people may complain about these games are old, who cares about these? But for those, especially for the younger generation who may not have been around or may not have tried some of these other titles, I think it's a great way for people to jump into older titles they either have never heard of or just maybe went under the radar, they missed or couldn't play it at the time. And I think it's a very great entry point into the ecosystem.
No, it is. I completely agree. And to be honest, I appreciate we're kind of covering old ground because, we have kind of discussed this quite a lot. And I guess one of the reasons to try and sort of bring some Series S to love was actually just the sort of the graphical power that it seems to have that Microsoft haven't necessarily been touting. Scott, do you think the marketing for the Series S has been on par with the Series X? Because I'm assuming, and I think most people assume that actually the Series S is probably going to sell more potentially over the lifetime of the generation, but perhaps it's not quite Microsoft's focus at the moment. But do you think they've done a particularly good job at trying to sell the S, or is they sort of busily focused on the X? Do you think?
I think they've predominantly been focused on the X, but for good reason. We're talking about pre-ordering a $500 or I guess $300 to $500 console in the middle of a global pandemic, and the likelihood is, and as we've seen, the people that are going to be picking up a console this holiday are going to be enthusiasts like ourselves, people who are more likely to get an X. And the poll that you put up actually just shows that. Obviously, we're all here today on a Sunday evening, talking about games and the topics that we've got on the show, and we've got a lovely chat who are also here to listen in and contribute. We're all enthusiasts. We're people who we want the best version of the game, and the S isn't marketed towards us at this point. A couple of the panel members have alluded to that, so they haven't really needed to just yet. You look at the launch allocations that seem to be going around for these consoles, and it's very much heavily weighted towards the Series X. I think around 80-20 ish in favor of the X in terms of the allocation that's available. But you've also got Phil Spencer on one hand saying he expects the Series S to be the console that sells the most. So Microsoft have obviously just looked at the situation. They've realized that the type of people that are going to be purchasing at the launch of a new console are people who are enthusiasts like ourselves, and that's why there's more X allocation available, despite the fact that they think longer term the S is going to be the biggest seller. So I think the marketing is just in line with that. You'll see they focus on the X. That's where obviously most of the hardware is. That's where most of their sales are going to be this year, maybe for the next 12 months or so. But then as you see the launch hype die down over the next, say, 12 to 18 months, you'll probably see that marketing ramp up. And you'll probably see them pushing the S a little bit more when they're maybe chasing not those early adopters, but the more casual market. And I think that's part of the reason why I guess it's quite difficult for someone like myself to comment on the S, because I will get an S eventually. I will say that I'm going to get an X at launch, and I'll probably get an S in maybe 12 months or so. Essentially, I'm going to replace my One X with an S when we get to that stage where games are exclusive to the series consoles rather than still available on the One. But as we've discussed, my Series S is just going to go in the room that I'm in now, where I've only got two 1080p displays. I don't even have 1440p up here. So the Series S is going to be perfect for that. So I think I guess just to go back to the original question is they haven't marketed it as much as the X just yet, but that's by design because they're pushing the X at this point, and we'll probably see that marketing ramp up, like I say, in 12 months or so.
Yeah, it's quite a clever strategy, isn't it? And like you say, perhaps looking at the Xbox marketing, it does kind of, point towards where their focus is at the moment. And like you say, it is obviously on the Series X, because I'm guessing, they make more money out of the Series X, perhaps at this moment in time. VJ, talking of the cost, where do you think Microsoft could go? Because it's such a cheap machine. Is there scope to make it even cheaper in the next couple of years, or are we going to be finding new SKUs and hardware come along, do you think? Because it's such a cheap price point, isn't it? I mean, would they make a Series S Slim at, I don't know, what, $200, $250?
We didn't really see a price movement on the hardware this generation, right? Until mid-gen upgrades were introduced. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. My memory's not quite what it used to be.
No, I think that's right.
If your hardware is selling, and then there's no need to adjust the pricing. On the other hand, if the S hits a brick wall, Microsoft may well react, just depending on the next topic and where that comes into the whole equation. Again, it will be centered or focused around the main trajectory, which is not hardware for them, but they say it isn't. But everything is aimed towards the trajectory of Game Pass subscribers. If subs are suitably increasing based on projections via system sales or stick sales or streaming apps or subscriptions via your phone, and I don't really see Xbox changing the price points at all, because the amount of money that these guys put into R&D. So the Slim and that, I think everything's pretty suitably priced in my opinion. They don't expect to outsell Sony on hardware, but I think they're really well geared up to do so.
You think that's the case, even this generation? You think they're sort of gearing themselves up to not outsell Sony on the hardware?
Okay, so let me just finish my point. So they don't expect to outsell Sony on hardware, but I think they are geared up to do so if, in fact, Sony slip up. I think in the US it will be pretty close, if not neck and neck, as it's historically been, and we've seen how hard and how good Sony have been this generation, and the Xbox Series X or One or One X install base, or if you want to include the SAD edition as well. God, there's so many S's and X's, isn't there?
Yeah, it does get confusing.
That's one thing I really, really don't like about the whole Xbox thing, right? But anyway, so. But in Europe and Asia and everything, they've still got a battle on their hands there. So all access, I think, again, I don't think that they're going to alter the price or structure on there, and it's more difficult to do so on there because you've got so many. Look, I don't know if the facts, but it just seems to me there's so many. There just seems to be so many more people taking a cut, if you know what I mean, in terms of. You've got the retailer, you've got the financiers, and you're going to have the insurers, and who knows what else that goes into the pot, right? In terms of making that actually a viable thing, right? And I think that the Sony brand is incredibly strong at the moment, and I think that cutting pricing and doing this, that, and the other, unless Sony and Nintendo and everybody, it just depends, right? Some of this equation is out of their hands, right? And I think that Microsoft right now pushing Game Pass, and as I said, and I think across as many devices as possible, and they're set up to sell hardware, and maybe it'll be neck and neck. I just don't know. And pushing the brand and investing in the brand, I think, is also going to be pretty key for them going forward. So that's my take on it. I had one really stupid question though, but I don't know if it's a good idea or not. But if you've got an Xbox One X, right, and you bought all these physical games, right, and we know the features that the new systems have got that are really enticing, right, to get you to go digital, and I'm one of those people, right, I want to take full advantage of the quick resume. Something just popped in my head, like an amnesty day where you take your physical games in to GameStop, and GameStop, and for a small price.
Apparently, that's a thing. Apparently, that's a thing. Yeah, I read that somewhere, and perhaps the chat can correct me on this, but I heard that there was going to be a program where GameStop would exchange your physical media for a digital code.
Well, that would be brilliant. That was my point. So if it is a thing, that's fantastic. I didn't know, and obviously I'm happy to receive a round of applause.
you get some cuts into that. Chat. Correct me if I'm right. Do you know, Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I did see the rumors on that on the internet, and these are rumors that have been going around, honestly, for years, if I'm being perfectly honest.
That's quite a big deal if it's true, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I just thought that died down. And then
I just thought that partnership with GameStop, and GameStop as a company who's trying to survive, right? And let's be honest, secondhand business market for them is huge. And if they could get Xbox to actually implement that officially, it would benefit Xbox gamers, and it would benefit GameStop, and it would show that Microsoft are truly not trying to double charge people that have already bought legacy software on disc that want to change up to digital, and longer term that benefits Microsoft, because obviously they'll make so much more on digital sales going forward. So it's a win-win all round potentially. I haven't done the business model for it, but there you go.
Don't the devs miss out? Because I'm guessing that once someone's traded in their physical disc, that they will then stick that on the shelf to be sold as second hand, as it were. And I guess the devs are the only ones that kind of miss out on that extra sale that they might have got.
Yeah.
Scott, sorry. Where were we?
That's fine. So, like I said, it's something that's been rumored for a little while, and I've just seen someone in chat mention that I think Microsoft may have talked about implementing that functionality. I can't remember Microsoft actually ever discussing it sort of officially, but it had been around for a little while. And then, as VJ mentioned, the GameStop partnership announcement basically refueled those rumors to come up. Nothing's official has come out just yet. Obviously, it would be fantastic for anyone looking to move from sort of a more physical media-based, I guess, collection to digital. But there are probably some complications, and VG has just mentioned one. You just mentioned one there, which is, what do they do with those old discs? Do they still sell them as second-hand, or so that there are some maybe interesting complications that might arise from that, but I don't think it's anything official just yet. But it was something that I think people started talking about again once the partnership with GameStop was announced, obviously recently. So hopefully, if Microsoft are planning on doing that, we'll hear about it soon, because I guess it's something that they'll probably want to talk about before launch.
Well, like I say, I'm guessing there's no particular downside from the platform holders' perspective. I can only imagine it would be the game developers that might have an issue with it, because, like I say, they're the kind of the ones that are missing out on that second sale. I mean, I know the platform holders take their cut, but
saying that, Phil, they've obviously sold the game initially, right? So they made either those games are going to sit on the shelf. But I was looking from a selfish Microsoft point of view, going back to my previous point in terms of build that brand, and it's great PR if they could do that. But it's a case of the equation is, well, if we do this, what effect does it have on the brand, and is it everlasting, and will it help us to succeed this gen? And that is only a question that Microsoft can answer. I don't know.
They're very brand aware at the moment, aren't they? They're spending a lot of time and effort upping the Microsoft / Xbox brand, aren't they? There's a lot of effort going into that, and I think that's needed as well, to be honest.
Absolutely, it's the most valuable commodity right now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And would the developers not get a kickback from that digital? Obviously, it wouldn't be a sale per se. It would be sort of a digital swap. But I imagine the devs would probably get some sort of kickback from Microsoft as part of that swap. So they've obviously got the money from the initial disc sale, but then I imagine to implement a feature like that, they probably would have to give devs some sort of kickback for that digital license that's being traded in. So maybe it works out in the devs' favor as well if Microsoft can come up with some sort of deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could definitely be sorted out, and I wouldn't expect it to sort of run forever, Phlapp. Just for a small window, maybe.
Yeah, it's strange that you called it an amnesty. Yeah, so that kind of that sort of points towards the fact that it's a sort of a limited time, then perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that one. Like I say, it was something I saw a little while ago, and like I say, nothing that I know has come of it. But since the deal with GameStop, it does seem like it could be a thing that would happen, perhaps only at GameStop or whatever, with the new sort of relationship that them and Microsoft have. Clownz, we'll go back a point or so if we can. SKUs in this generation. Do you think Microsoft are just going to stick to the 2 SKUs, or do you think we might actually see a fair number of SKUs? Because is there a possibility that we might see a digital only Series X, or might we see a Series S with higher sort of memory capacity? Things like that. Do you think there's potential for more SKUs, or do you think Microsoft will try and keep it as simple as they can?
I think as of right now, at least for the next, I want to say at least for the next good 4 years, we're going to see the same. Yeah, we're going to see the same 2 SKUs. I think that when memory and the SSDs drop in price, I think maybe we'll see a Series S with better storage, and same thing with the Series X, like a more premium kind of model with storage. But other than that, I don't really see too many iterations for this upcoming generation.
The only reason I sort of mention that is because, the memory capacity is pretty small. The storage capacity is pretty small in the Series S, isn't it? I just wondered because, that the cost and the price of it's so cheap that it kind of seems like the only way they can go is actually upwards in cost in some regards. And if they can actually sort of perhaps sell a slightly more expensive machine, but with, obviously a higher storage capacity, that's one way they could go, I suppose. It just depends on how many SKUs they want to have out in the field and how confusing it's going to be for people. Pux, we get the blooming Series X and Series S and 1X and 1S names mixed up all the time. And when I listened back to the podcast, sometimes I said, I said 1X when I meant Series X there and stuff. It's a little bit strange, isn't it, that Microsoft have gone down this route? Do you think they've sort of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with regards having other SKUs and stuff with regards, calling it Series S and 1S and Series X and 1X?
My immediate thought is, I suppose, yes, they have, or maybe they have kind of shot themselves in the foot a bit. Because, I mean, for the longest time, we only ever heard about Xbox Series kind of being the thing, because this was way back in January with the Austin Evans kind of reveal that we kind of got. And I can't remember the head of Xbox or the guy with the really long beard. What's his name?
Jason Ronald.
The one that introduced the hardware and stuff.
Yeah, Jason Ronald. Yep.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. So, because he was mentioning then that Xbox as itself is becoming, it's not just a console anymore. It's its own brand and kind of ecosystem in its own right. And they went for a long time about how it doesn't need another name because Xbox is Xbox. But then also, they have to give it a code name. And I think at the time when you hear Series X, it's just like, oh, that sounds powerful, doesn't it? I suppose because everyone's looking at the 1X, knowing that was a powerful machine. You're like, oh, this is the Series X. The way that I think they kind of tried to market it was that, you hear the term Series X and you think, oh man, that's grunt, that's power, that's 4K, that's all this other stuff. And then I imagine, I'd like to think, I mean, this probably isn't the case, but I'd like to think that all the while that they was waiting for the Series S to kind of be officially revealed, because I think a lot of correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think a lot of the rumors and speculation online, a lot of people kind of called it the Series S because it was called the Series X, if you know what I mean. So I don't know whether or not Microsoft thought, well, should we just call it the Series S because that's what everyone else is calling it already online?
I think that was the plan from the beginning, and I'm kind of pleased it was. I'm kind of pleased they stuck with that because, like you say, it was in our psyche that it was going to be called the Series S, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think in the long term, though, or even in maybe just the next couple of months, I can't imagine it's going to be too long until Microsoft discontinue the Xbox One line of systems. I think they've already said, correct me if I'm wrong again, but I think they have stated that the 1S systems will still be manufactured, but I believe the 1X and the 1 are going to be discontinued relatively soon, which makes perfect sense to me. And obviously from that, say, give it even just a year from now or 6 months from now, I think when you hear Xbox, you're only going to understand Series X and Series S. I don't think anyone is going to mistake that for Xbox One anymore.
Well, I thought it was quite interesting when the Series V rumours were floating around and there was that kind of fake picture of someone had obviously photoshopped something in between the Series S and Series X, which I found quite funny. But it did kind of make me ask the question of, if they did want to sort of put a machine in the middle or one above or one below, and we're coming to the GamePass Stick, what would you call it? Because you're kind of tied into the Series thing and they've already used S and X. So, would they have a Series V? It's just an interesting little question.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess what it would be possibly if there was different SKUs, there would just be iterations of the Series X and S, wouldn't there? So there'd be an all-digital Series X and perhaps a Series S with an optical drive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. Before we continue, do you mind if I just read out some comments based on the previous stuff? We haven't addressed the comments yet, so I'm going to start from comments which are basically talking about the code stuff, but the code and disk and DRMs and stuff. So I've got a comment here from Shizno Elite, who says, I hope we see that physical to digital thing happens. There are a couple of games I can't buy digital, so wonder if I will be able to get a code for those, which I think is quite an interesting take on it.
Yeah. You know what? I downloaded Daytona USA yesterday on the Xbox One X, and it wouldn't allow me to download it in the Microsoft Store itself on the One X, which I was real peeved. It was like, this download isn't available. So I just Googled it, and it actually came up on the online Microsoft Store in the web browser. So I purchased it there, and when I booted up my One X, it was sitting there ready and waiting for me. So there is some strange stuff with regards to what you can and can't buy digitally on the store and stuff.
Sounds like potentially just a crossed wires, almost quite literally from the software perspective.
Anyway, I ended up getting Daytona, and I absolutely loved it. I remembered how much I loved that game. Anyway, that's a different story.
That's all right. I've got another one here from Fun Speculation, which I think is interesting, and we have briefly talked about this before. So Fun Speculation says, this was a feature Xbox wanted to implement back in 2013, but they got hammered because of DRM, and so they flipped on it. And I think that's interesting, and it's very true, because we actually talked about this on a previous podcast about how the world and how people viewed the world in 2013 is completely different to now in 2020. Quickly, just to reiterate, which I know we've roughly spoken about weeks prior, about things like Amazon Prime and Netflix and Spotify and other streaming services have slowly become the norm. And I think going back to 2013 very briefly, I think effectively Microsoft obviously are doing now what they wanted to do back then, but I imagine it's it takes time for people to want to shift their minds and to get used to something, believe it or not. And unfortunately, I mean, you could look at Apple, for example, how they eventually phase out, the headphone jack, whether that's a good or bad idea, but that's a different story. But people get used to it, is my point. And people start to kind of change the way that they view and access different media. So I think as much as it's right to say, people canned them in 2013, and why was that? And I'd probably argue that, streaming services were not as mainstream as they are now. I mean, in 2013, I imagine a lot of people were probably still buying CDs and DVDs, whereas 7-8 years later from then, in my perspective at least, who buys a DVD or a CD anymore?
Yeah, I think VJ alluded to this. I believe it was in last week's show, or perhaps the one before. Microsoft in the Xbox One era were kind of ahead of their time, really. That we kind of weren't ready for an always-on machine, but here we are. With games like Destiny 2 and things like that. We have to be online. You can't play it not being online. So, like you say, we live in a different world now in 2020, don't we?
Yeah, so I think unfortunately for Microsoft at the time, I think it's more a case of the world wasn't ready for it, simply. And I think, as we've said before, and if you just alluded to there, I think you could argue that actually Microsoft were ahead of the curve, but maybe just tried to implement it the wrong way by forcing people to do it, as opposed to getting people used to it over time.
We've said this before, haven't we? It's quite strange how Sony don't mind sitting back and watching Microsoft take all the flack for some of these difficult decisions, and then, a year or two later actually come out and do it themselves.
Yeah, well, I suppose someone's got to take the flack, and then you capitalise on that afterwards. Yeah,
Microsoft don't mind being the whipping boy to a certain degree, but yeah.
Well, funnily enough, I've just seen a comment from Dragon Wolf who says, people are still buying vinyl, which is very true. Actually, vinyl's making a comeback, so that might have shot my comment in the foot a little bit, but.
That's true. Well, the retro game market's still a huge market, isn't it? And I know people like John Linneman and stuff. They don't particularly like the digital future because they like having that physical disc and things like that. And you are a little bit limited to these companies. I think Stadia is probably a good example, isn't it? Because does anyone have absolute faith that Stadia is going to be here in 5 years' time? Probably not.
I'm not convinced it will probably be around in 3 years' time.
Right. But... So do you then want to be spending £60 on whatever game, not knowing that it's going to be here in 5 years' time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay, what else we got going in the chat?
I have another comment here from Dragonmorph, actually, who says that if the disc has a DRM code on it, maybe just put the disc into the system and it makes that disc unusable. This is kind of going back to what VJ was saying. So whether or not...
I don't think every disc has a unique identifier on the disc, does it?
Yeah.
I don't
think it would even if it did, though, I think that's an interesting question, I think, or... proposition, because I don't think long term that would really be sustainable. Because if people were buying discs and then buying digital codes later to convert that physical to digital license, you're almost kind of throwing money away from the manufacturing of the disc, right? So that money has to go somewhere. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking, with that idea, I don't think necessarily they could put a unique identifier in each disc because it'd be too large of a database. However, what they could do is that when you insert the disc has its own license, and then it creates a unique hash between the disc license and the motherboard or a chip on the console itself.
Or the account. It could do it to the account, couldn't it?
To the
online account. Yeah.
Yep. And then sends it to the cloud. I mean, they could do it that way.
I've just seen something else in the chat as well from John B, who says that, at least specific to GameStop, saying that they need a kiosk machine where you sign in with your Xbox account, you put your disc in, and then it automatically converts it into a license, and then destroys the disc.
That would be so cool. Yeah. That's
so
a
just
great
imagine
idea,
putting
John.
a disc here, you just throw sawdust back at you. Dispose of it yourself, but here you
John
go.
B. John B's got some homework. Get yourself down the patent office.
That's not a bad little idea, I guess.
That's good. I want that in the stores by December, John. So pull your finger out. Cool. Well, you actually come up with a little question as well, Scott. What's everyone doing with their old hardware? What are you doing with yours, Clownz? We'll start with you, Clownz. Actually, what when you get your Series X, and hopefully you do, and your Series S and stuff. What are you going to do with your current consoles?
Well, I was going to trade in the One X towards the Series X. That was my plan. To get that $200 bonus at GameStop. But I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to do that now because I got the PS5 completely paid for. I sold a bunch of stuff that I no longer needed, and I paid for the PS5. So I could essentially just trade in my PS4 Pro towards the Series X and keep my One X for maybe the living room or something. So I'm iffy on this one. It's a 50-50. I mean, I could trade in and get some extra credit, maybe get more Game Pass years ahead. I'm booked up till 2022, or I maybe get some games, something like that. I'm not sure yet though.
I'm guessing the second-hand console market prices are going to tank fairly soon if they haven't already, to be honest. So now's the time to do it, I guess. Scott, you asked the question. Scott, what's your plans?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Phlapp, about the second-hand market. Normally, in years gone by, I would trade it in or maybe sell it on eBay. But really, I don't want to go maybe a month or even a couple of weeks without my Xbox. It's my primary hobby. Yeah. So, but also Microsoft's approach with this generation, where their first-party games are going to be released on both the One and the Series consoles for at least the first couple of years, actually made me think, you know what it is? I'll just keep it. I'm in a position now where my One X is downstairs on the TV. I don't have a console in sort of my office space, so to speak. So I often take advantage of the console companion app on Windows to stream from my console to my laptop. Just when my girlfriend's watching TV, I'll maybe play some games on that.
Because I've tried that. How does that work out for you? Because I've always found it a little bit hit and miss, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not the ideal way of playing because it adds that level of latency to it. But there are certain games similar to sort of the streaming argument that are more suited to that type of experience, I guess. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my One X up into my office space and continue to play Xbox games on my One S up here, and then have my Series X downstairs with my 4K TV. I'll do the majority of my gaming, but if my girlfriend's downstairs watching some TV and I want to go and play some more Titanfall 2, I'll just be able to pop upstairs, where at the moment I don't quite have that opportunity. And because of Microsoft's approach to their first party for the first couple of years, my plan is to do that. And then when we get the stage where games start releasing for the Series consoles exclusively from first party, and they're no longer available for the One, then I'll probably replace the One X with the Series S upstairs. So that's my plan, I think. I know a couple of my friends who are in a similar position, where they're planning on keeping theirs to basically have a sort of a secondary console for the same reasons, basically because of Microsoft's approach to first party, which I know a lot of people criticize them for, but in my personal opinion, it's actually going to benefit me because I'm going to be able to play it in more places than I am at the moment. Obviously, I'm lucky that I don't have to trade in the console to contribute towards the One X. So obviously, there is a financial aspect. But yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing. I think, and that'll probably be me for maybe the first year or two, and then a Series S maybe a little bit later down the line. No,
I completely agree. I mean, the whole sort of smart delivery, and we do believe in generations kind of comments coming from Microsoft. It certainly makes that decision a little bit easier, doesn't it? And to be honest, I was toying because I've got a One X. What do I do with it? Like you say, I think I'm just going to hang on to it, and that will actually be my second console, to be honest, in my sort of in my bedroom or whatever. Yeah, it's an interesting point, and the chat seems to have lit up because some people have already sold their machines for quite a lot. Actually, I was quite surprised. So Shady, he's already sold his One X for $270, and the original VCR type one, I'm guessing that is for $150. So it's not a bad return, actually.
Yes, Shady says he sold his One X for $270.
Yeah.
That's how much is a Series S in the States? It's $300, isn't it? So
yeah,
he sold his One X and he extra $30 and he gets a Series S. So yeah, I mean,
wow.
I guess if you're in a position where you can sell it now and you can go, a couple of weeks or maybe longer without it, then great. But I don't think I could go even a week without having my One X.
No,
Perfectly honest.
I completely agree. And I've got a Win 10 PC that I can play games and stuff on, but I still love my Xbox console. There's nothing that quite beats it, to be honest. Pux, are we all caught up with the chat?
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it, really. I mean, everyone's kind of on board with what you're saying and talking about what they're selling their old systems for. I mean, if you currently want my take on it, just to throw it out there, I mean, because I still have a PS4, of course. So for me, obviously, I'm going to keep that. And if anything, I'm actually quite looking forward to still having my PS4 because it can play things like Miles Morales. And if I'm honest, I am not fussed about not having a super fast loading 4K machine, because that's going to cost me an extra 500 odd quid. So I'm happy to keep my PS4 and just jump into some of those smaller, kind of those one-off titles like that. And then obviously games like Bug Snacks and other kind of weird ones like that are also coming to PC. So in that respect, I'm not really missing out. But one thing,
thankfully, Sony don't believe in generations because that allows you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and just to throw it out there, I mean, I love the Nintendo Wii so much. I still have it hooked up to my main TV. But since having the Switch for a long time, I've not actually turned it on for a long while now, especially since the Mario collection came out. So I think I am toying with the idea that it might now be time for me to box up my the Wii, and that will be the Series X spot.
No, fair enough. Well, Vijay, I'm guessing you're hanging on to your Switch, aren't you? You're not trading that in?
Yeah, no, I'll keep hold of the Switch, but normally when I upgrade, I normally pass my hardware on to friends or family.
Yeah.
I don't really hold on to stuff like that. No.
What's your most favorite console ever, VJ?
Me?
Yeah.
It's not really the console. It's probably the hardware where I've had the most fun on. And
cool.
I was just a massive fan of Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 and Resident Evil 4 as well. And so I could get all of those on the Wii. I know it sounds strange, but I just love those two games, and I play them over and over again. I had to get every single star. So,
some games do that, don't they? Some games make you compulsive.
Yeah, and as soon as that triple package came out from Nintendo, I was straight on Amazon to order it. So,
yeah, I'm with you there, VJ. I pre-ordered it as well.
Yeah.
And, Mario Galaxy was the main pull for me. That game was just so ahead of its time. I know it was on the Wii and so on and so forth, and I know the machine did really, really well, but not as many. I don't know if as many hardcore gamers bought it as, say, the GameCube or the N64 or subsequently. We'll take the Wii U out of it or the Nintendo Switch. So it's just a game I'd recommend anyone to experience. But with the Wiimote, it was just phenomenal. And I know a lot of people didn't get on with it, but I did.
Yeah, I did as well. It took me a little while, but I got on with it as well. Fun speculations. Just put Dreamcast. I actually fired up my Dreamcast yesterday. I was playing Sega Rally 2 all evening on Riviera Expert time trials. Absolutely love that. I love my Dreamcast to bits, and I know I'm not alone in that. Right, but that's kind of topic one done. Thank you very much, everyone. Chat, you've been phenomenal. Thank you very much. It's been. I love seeing the chat flying around. It's so good because there's so many comments to look at. And we've actually broken records tonight. I think, is it 58 we reached?
I did see at one point, I think I saw 58, 56. We're sitting at 50 at the moment. So, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Absolutely. I think we hit 49 last week. So, we've kind of smashed last week. So, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, chat's always great to see. Let's give some shouts out to people I haven't. So, Dragon Wolf, great to have you here. So Shady, I think you're new to the channel. So, it's great to see you here. Wakanda, always great to see you. 3 bits in the chat as well. Excellent. Just scrolling up. SX2's in the chat. I always have to drop that one. Warning shots, Malesco, excellent. It's great to see you guys here because I know we sort of we sort of converse on Twitter and stuff. Good Eye's here. Was a 55. Yeah, we sort of converse on Twitter and stuff, and it's so great to see you guys in the chat. Just to meet you in the chat and hear what you think about the sort of topics we discuss. Right, this next one, I'm really excited for this next one actually, because it kind of took me off guard a little bit, but kind of not when I sort of sat back and thought about it. And this is obviously the GamePass Stick. That kind of Phil Spencer alluded to, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because obviously, nothing's been confirmed. Although, when someone like Phil Spencer or even Jim Ryan for that, when they start talking about things like that, it's all very calculated and they know exactly what they're saying. In fact, one of the reasons I couldn't do Phil Spencer's job, one of the many reasons I couldn't do it, is because I'd probably blurt out too much information. He's very reserved, and like I say, it's almost like what he says is scripted, but he says it in such a natural way that it doesn't come across like it's scripted at all. And so he was very sort of cagey around, or reserved around what he was kind of alluding to. But the fact that he's alluded to it in the first place is almost a pointer that it's already in the works, to be honest. So for anyone that doesn't know, and I'm sure everyone does, that he alluded to the fact that there could be a sort of a Game Pass sort of TV stick that I'm guessing has an HDMI connector on it, and you literally plug it straight into your TV, and it's obviously got a Wi-Fi built in, so you can stream Game Pass games straight to this TV stick. Very much like Chromecast or the Amazon Fire Sticks. I mean, those sort of things already exist. I'll come to you first, Pux, if you don't mind, because we've spoken about streaming. I've done a few videos on the Xbox app on the phone, cloud streaming and stuff. What do you think needs to happen for streaming of this kind to become mainstream? Because we've spoken about the Series S and how it's for the casuals. Well, where does this sort of game streaming fit in? Is that for the casuals as well, or is that for a completely new audience, do you think?
There's a lot of nuances to that question. My first instinct kind of thought when you mentioned that is, do people across the world have the internet infrastructure to even support it? Because you could argue that, most of the world are enjoying Netflix and Spotify and all these things, but those types of content require a lot less bandwidth and a lot less, the latency doesn't matter, right? You can have a Netflix video buffer for a number of seconds and who cares, because it's going to be fine after that. Whereas a video game needs to be instantaneous almost, and you want to have as little input latency as possible. So you need to have constant on the fly top working connections. And I think here in the UK, I think I mentioned it before as well, that there are a number of households now that are now being introduced to fiber to the home, so you don't have your little green box outside in the corner of your street. It has copper cable. Those kind of connections can now support up to 1 gigabit, which is being rolled out. So places like here, and if you can afford that, that's not a problem. But I think the majority of the UK, and I'd like to argue most of the world as well, aren't in positions where they have the infrastructure in place to support it. So in the long term, to answer the question about streaming, I think the idea of a streaming stick for Game Pass is a fantastic idea. I think it's going to be a very cheap way to introduce people to, if not gaming for the first time. So I'd like to think that something like a stick is just, if maybe you buy the hardware itself, maybe £50 to £100, right, or dollars, whatever, and then you put a Game Pass subscription on top of that, maybe even like a special Game Pass subscription just for your TV stick thing, whatever it's called. So you're not paying, like 15 quid a month or whatever it is. Maybe you're just paying £5 a month just for the stick. And then, maybe it comes with a controller, or maybe you can Bluetooth a cheap controller to it. So there might be some cost behind it with that. But I think for those that are like, is Xbox for me? Do I want to do gaming? Do I really want to try it £250? Oh, but I don't have a gaming PC. What do I do? Well, okay, if you don't have a phone that can't support, xCloud or whatever, then try a streaming stick. But I've almost shot myself in the foot there, because it's almost most people in the world now have a phone which can support that. Even if your home Wi-Fi doesn't, 4G and especially 5G connections can easily support cloud streaming. So I'd argue there's ways to do that. But then me just bringing that up, I'm now kind of thinking on the fly now, is that because most of the world doesn't have the infrastructure in place to support fast internet, which game streaming requires, do Microsoft try to come up with something which is almost like putting a 4G SIM card into this thing so that you're actually getting your connection that way? Or maybe even like a 5G once the world supports that. That's a lot there, I know, but I've just kind of thought on the fly there, and it's just like, well, how I'm almost troubleshooting it as I go along. So it's like, how do you combat the fact that the large majority of people don't have fast internet? Well, most people actually, I believe, do have access to relatively high-speed cellular networks. So do you leverage that instead with a streaming stick?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that's kind of been done through the mobile phone anyway, isn't it? I mean, you can kind of get that service via your 5G phone if you have one and you live pretty much under an antenna to be able to get the most out of 5G. It's an interesting point, and to be honest, if that's a discussion, I guess that's quite a way down the road. Vijay, I'm coming to you next, if that's okay, my friend. But just one point, Puxley. I mean, there is a difference between having high-speed internet and low-latency internet. There's a big difference there, and the thing that really makes the difference for game streaming is the low latency side of things.
Yeah, it's a mixture between good download and upload speed, isn't it? I think it's probably to be more specific. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thanks.
Vijay, who do you think the audience for this TV stick could potentially be then? I mean, is there an extra tier of casual gamers that Microsoft are going for? Or is this a new tier of people that, hasn't even really been tapped into yet?
It's not really an area I'm particularly aware of, so my comments may be a little restricted.
To be honest, mate, it's an open question and no one knows the answer. So give us your gut feeling.
I think the future is, just to sort of tack on to what Puxley was saying, I think the future is out of reach at the moment, mainly due to the global infrastructure. And I know you mentioned the SIM card, but purchasing data when I speak to people is not cheap, especially with the phone providers as greedy as they are, and they're very greedy at the moment over here anyway. And the biggest one is obviously, if you've got it in at home, is the latency issue. Living in California, the internet's not good, and it's been out more times in a year, Phlapp, to be honest with you, than it was living in London for 5 years.
Wow.
Virgin Media. And so just to give you an idea, right, and it's supposed to be a cutting edge over here, right up Silicon Valley is just up the road. But so to be honest with you, in terms of experience, I think it's quite a key. So just to be clear in my mind, and to keep it simple, streaming is just an inferior but not a bad experience, be it TV shows or movies or gaming. In a vacuum, it's great. But start to compare it with something else, it definitely falls apart. For me, this is for me. And I was speaking to some other gamers when you raised it, and a couple of people by chance, I had no idea, but sort of play esports games, and that scene's growing quite a lot. And is it Rainbow Six, Counter Strike? I think games like Rocket League and Fortnite were thrown at me. I thought, oh my god! I thought they were all like very highly competitive and serious players, but it's a place where people go to engage, enjoy, and have fun as well. So I know we discussed as well in terms of cloud gaming about a week or so ago that it's worth 600 million this year or next year, and within a couple of years, 2023 is supposed to be 4.8 billion. And when we spoke about it, I went out and I tried to find something, something solid, something concrete, something that cements or ratifies or endorses these claims, and I couldn't really find anything. And it's just, it really, really depends on the pricing, I think, when it comes to where it fits in. And obviously, just previously, the first question was, is the S going to go back to being a slim? Will it drop in price, and so on and so forth? So it really depends on the pricing structure of this thing, right? And in terms of the quality, right, of the build, which Puxley also just kind of touched upon. What's the Wi-Fi receiver going to be like? Is it going to have a Bluetooth, an antenna, and are they going to be of the highest standard? Is there going to be, and I know it'll have you talked about SIM card, but I don't know if these sticks can even have an Ethernet plug-in port, right? So you can just reduce latency straight away that way, right? But just sticking a cheap stick into a slow smart TV definitely won't be a great experience. So I think there's a few things there that need to be sorted out, and I guess a lot of it comes down to the tech. I don't know how big these things are, Phlapp, so I don't know how much they can cram inside it just to make that experience as smooth as possible.
I mean, I've got a Chromecast,
Right.
Oh, blimey, I think it's third generation again. And to be honest, my next statement kind of highlights the issue, doesn't it? I've got a third generation Chromecast,
Right.
and so they exist in generations. But obviously, when we're talking about generations, we're talking possibly 1 year to 18 months is a generation for these kind of devices, because I think they're normally quite cheap to build. They don't tend to last that long. From memory, and perhaps someone in the chat can correct me, that I think you can plug the Chromecast into a special plug, and that on the plug itself actually has an Ethernet port that you can plug into your router, and then obviously from that plug it travels up into the Chromecast. I think that's right. So you don't necessarily have to use Wi-Fi from the Chromecast. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. I've not used that function, but I think that's how it works from memory. Now, it's a very interesting point, VJ, and it's one that I was going to try and bring up actually, is about the quality of these devices, but perhaps we'll come back to that in a bit. Scott, I'll come to you if that's okay, mate. So it's the same question, really. I mean, who do you think this stick is for? Because don't they have all bases covered with their mobile phone game streaming and the Series S? Is there a gap for this, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's predominantly a completely new audience. You'll hear Phil Spencer and Microsoft talk all the time about the 2 million gamers, and the fact that the console market is a relatively small portion of that. You've got what's the Xbox One? So this generation, 50 million plus, I think, is the
people have been saying
estimate.
50 million for a long
Yeah.
time. It's got to be more than that, but
Yeah.
Microsoft gave up on giving out numbers, didn't they?
Yeah, so the Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One are probably around at the moment the 200 million-ish figure, maybe closer to 250. And obviously that's just a small portion of the 2 billion alleged gamers they are in the world. And obviously there are certain markets worldwide that don't play on consoles. They predominantly play on phone. And they aren't currently a part of the Xbox ecosystem. And that's Microsoft's play, to try and bring those people into the Xbox ecosystem who wouldn't typically buy an Xbox console and aren't going to buy an Xbox console in the future. So I think it's just part of that play. And it actually fits in a little bit to a question you raised in the previous topic, Phlapp, when you're talking about SKUs. This is their sort of third, I guess, SKU for the series, but that SKU can come in many different forms. It can come in the form of the streaming stick. It can come in the form of an app on your phone. It can come in the form of an app on your TV. We've even seen it come in the form of someone getting it working on a fridge. I don't know if you saw that recently.
Yeah, I did actually. I did see that,
which was hilarious. So, and when it comes to iOS as well, that's at some point next year. It seems that's a big part of it. So the streaming stick, or just streaming in general, is Microsoft's third SKU, and that will just seemingly be available on many different pieces of hardware, and the streaming stick will just form part of that, is how I see it. So yeah, I guess just to answer your question, it is just a case of they're bringing new gamers into the not necessarily new gamers, they're bringing gamers into the Xbox ecosystem that wouldn't typically play on a home console.
Yeah, it's an interesting, kind of group of people that they perhaps haven't yet tapped into. Then, and just makes me wonder how they're going to market it. I mean, Clownz, we already have I've already rattled two off from the top of my head. We already have a Chromecast. We already have an Amazon TV Fire Stick. Do you think the sort of the Xbox equivalent will still do all of the things that those ones do? So streaming Roku movies and Netflix and Amazon Prime and things like that. Do you think the GamePass Stick will do all of that and play games, or do you think Microsoft will just hone in on the games aspect?
It's really tough to say. I have no idea how they'll pull this off and how they'll market it.
It just makes me wonder if they're going to compete with Amazon and Google in that particular arena as well, because obviously, that's it's an arena that's hotting up competition wise.
See, that would be really tough, I think, to again, because like Amazon, I would believe is the leader with the Fire Stick, if anything, and that Fire Stick can play games with a Bluetooth controller. Because Microsoft would probably use a Windows-based OS underneath their streaming stick, so it would be more resource hoggy. The only thing I could imagine besides gaming that they would put on there is maybe Microsoft Movies and TV or whatever the app is called by then. But other than that, it would be really hard to connect other services that they have. So it'd be more of a guessing game what kind of services they got going at the time.
If you don't mind me
Yeah.
interrupting,
Yeah, go for it.
They're flat apologies, Clowns. You make an interesting point there as to what will be the base OS for a stick, and I'd probably argue it will more likely be Android in my opinion. Similar
Would
to
be Windows CE.
Fire
Thank
Stick.
God.
Yeah. They've obviously they've worked a lot more with Android in the past couple of years on the mobile space. You can get the Microsoft launcher on your Android phone at the moment. The Surface Duo launched with Android.
But that's a Google thing, though, isn't it? Android.
Yeah,
It is.
So, but the Amazon service obviously already uses and the Android OS from like obviously it's Amazon's Fire OS sort of layered over the top. So I imagine it would probably be an Android based stick, at least in my opinion, and that would probably give them access to the Google Play Store. So if they did go down that route, you would potentially basically have a Fire Stick that ran Android with the Microsoft launcher over the top that had access to Netflix, to YouTube, to all the various other media devices. And then all you've got to do is download, well, I imagine it will be preloaded, but then you would just have the Game Pass Android app available on that device. Because I think if it was Windows, I think Clowns, I think you were mentioning there the performance side of things. I think they would probably struggle with performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if they were looking to make it a media stick, which I kind of think they have to. I think if you're going to introduce this, I think it maybe has to do more than just Game Pass or gaming.
That's an interesting point then. So they are competing then with this stick, then you think, with Chromecast and the Amazon Fire Stick then?
Yeah, I'd say so. If you ask Phil Spencer, he'll say Google and Amazon are the opposition, and their services. But actually, it's funny. I don't know if when Google announced the most recent Chrome device that they released, it doesn't actually support Stadia at the moment, which I honestly thought was hilarious when that was announced. But ultimately, Stadia and Luna are going to be available on Fire Sticks, on Fire Cubes, on Chromecasts, and they all also offer those other services. And if they're competing with them, I imagine they would probably want to do something similar. And like I say, if they do go down an Android-based OS for the stick, they would have that sort of by default, I guess, because they could in theory have access to the Play Store. So, it will be extremely interesting to see what route they go down, because Game Pass and game streaming isn't actually available on Windows at the moment. It's actually only available on Android. So if you wanted to right now, you couldn't. So, well,
that's one of the things I think has come out of this week, isn't it? That is coming. That service is coming, I believe, early next year. Is it?
Yeah, they said some point in 2021.
Right.
So yeah, and it'll be good to see how the performance differs between the two. But I guess by that point, Android or the Android app will probably be a more mature, I guess, experience, or a mature application at that point.
Can I this as well? Can I add to this as well?
Yes, you can. But hang on, before you do, I just want to quickly pop this up on the screen at Guy Anonymous. Now, this does kind of point to the future, and I know this is probably a more distant future than we were possibly sort of alluding to, but Starlink is a thing that Elon Musk is trying to do. And so the prospect of, blisteringly fast internet speeds all around the world isn't just sort of science fiction. This isn't Arthur C. Clarke making this kind of stuff up. This is actually happening. And, I don't know about timescales or how good it's going to be even, but the prospect of this happening, it's not that far into the future. And, I'm guessing people like Microsoft and Amazon and Google are probably paying very close attention to this, because it does open up the door for lots of more possibilities. And perhaps, like you say, things like game streaming, once Starlink is up and running, is an absolute, something that can happen and is possibly the future of console gaming, potentially. I know that's a huge statement, and there'll probably be lots of people in the chat disagreeing, but until it's here, we're never actually going to really know. Sorry, Pux.
No, it was more just adding on to what you're saying about the OS of a potential future Xbox streaming stick, because rightly so, Chaos Santi's pointed out in the chat that Android as an operating system at its core is actually open source. And as I think it was
Yeah.
Scott or Clownz that was mentioned a minute ago, that a lot of the, Samsung and all these other companies and Kindle Fire and all the rest of it just slap on their own kind of skin on the top, and then they just close source their own version of it, if that makes sense. So if anything, I would see that, why would Microsoft pay out for, or spend the resources to put together their own OS when actually just use what already exists and what works everywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What do you think they're going to do around the controller? And this is for the chat as well. And I know you guys are pretty technically able and know your onions in the chat. So let us know your thoughts, because
I've already seen some comments about that, actually.
Okay, well, let's dive into that, because I know Stadia does this thing where your controller actually logs directly into your Wi-Fi router, so it doesn't have to go via the Chromecast, which obviously reduces latency to a certain degree. Now, as far as I'm aware, none of the Microsoft controllers in their current build are capable of logging straight into your regular home Wi-Fi network. So do you think we're going to be looking at a new set of controllers, or are they going to do it via Bluetooth and the device? Because that just adds latency, doesn't it?
You say that, but I think from a cost point of view, it doesn't make sense in my mind why Microsoft would create a brand new controller for it. You would just have a streaming stick you plug into the back of your TV, and then but that won't just be like a small stick like the Kindle sort of sticks or whatever. We'd probably talk about maybe a box of an actual cable which you plug in, and maybe you have to get an external power source for it. But effectively, I'll see a box which you would then Bluetooth your Xbox controller to, and then it just goes straight from that. The rest of it is streamed. And then people are even saying that maybe if this is a thing and it is actually true, that Microsoft may well bundle the streaming stick with an Xbox controller. So you just get basically you're buying a package, not just the stick, if you don't have any of it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've just been reading in the chat. Sorry, did I say streaking instead of streaming? Sorry.
Oh, did you? I missed that as well.
Perhaps that's a Freudian slip, but we won't go there. VJ, Phil Spencer also alluded to, one of the other things that he alluded to was kind of perhaps an extra tier of Game Pass. So, again, they've kind of backed themselves into a bit of a corner because they've already got Game Pass Ultimate. So I don't know what the one above Ultimate would be if that was the case. But he did hint towards the fact that there may be a sort of a subscription service as part of a Game Pass Premium or Platinum or whatever that comes with this stick. Is that something you think Microsoft would do and that people would buy into?
I'm not sure. I think just going back to what Puxley's saying. So basically, if they're really going to go down this stick thing, you've got the controller, you're probably going to have a media remote, and not forgetting the PlayStation unit. I was just thinking about pricing. I reckon they could get if you've already got an Xbox, then you probably just want the components, right? And maybe they can get the price down to $80, right? And if for $99, maybe 1 to 3 months of Game Pass. These are just high level numbers, right? And then I see a 150 package with 3 to 6 months of Game Pass bundled in, and it makes sense because 6 months you'd normally end up paying 90, right? So they want to get you the components, they want you to get playing on there, they want you to enjoy it, and then they want you to continue subscribing to it rather than just sort of leave it plugged in and or set aside. So I think that's got to be the entry point. I'm just looking at what the Series S is, $299. So I don't know what it is over there. Is it $250 or something?
Yeah,
$250. Yeah. So in terms of what they could do with the stick, I really don't know how far they want to go with this. I'm with Puxley on this. I think they currently employ Bluetooth. So why fiddle around with and cause a change in an established ecosystem, which everybody's familiar with, right? You can connect and I understand. I have no idea, whether the Bluetooth, how much that costs exactly. And but what I do know is that obviously, if your internet's out or whatever, and you've got instead of your stick and you want to go and play it on your laptop, right? I'm assuming that the Bluetooth controller easily connects with your laptop or your PC as well.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of all makes sense. Hopefully Microsoft won't change two things, right? It's just as much as plug and play as possible. Now, I don't know if I've understood your question correctly. I just hope they don't start sort of like, sort of saying, here's a subscription and you can buy the stick, and depending on which stick you buy. I'd rather just keep to one stick rather than having one with a higher refresh rate and a higher.
No, there'd only be one stick. It would be a little bit like All Access. So basically, it's a subscription. So your subscription for the top tier, as it were, you would get a stick bundled with it. Only the one stick, but
yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting if you just order off of Amazon.
It's an interesting space, isn't it, at the moment? Because, like I say, in previous shows, we've been focusing on Sony as Microsoft competitor a lot, and obviously in lots of regards they are. But it is interesting to see, when they're talking about these sort of technologies that actually Sony aren't part. They're not at this moment in time. I'm not saying they won't be, but at this moment in time, they're not at the table, are they?
No, I think. If you really look at it really carefully, I think this has had a huge amount of investment in it, Phlapp, let alone all the servers that they're putting in place, and all of these new initiatives that they're trying. And I think Sony and Nintendo, and I think I've alluded to this in your chat before, is that I think they're just sitting back, watching what works, what doesn't work, what's the pickup rate, and then they'll tailor their business plans accordingly in the future. It's too risky for them to change right now, and I think for Microsoft, they've got the money to do it. But if I was interested in getting the stick or on so on and so forth, I think they just try to structure the deal whereby the components such as the controller stick, media card, power supply unit, or whatever else that's bundled in there, are priced as cheap as possible, and Game Pass is bundled into a degree. I think everything is geared towards increasing subscriptions. Unless you just want the basic equipment, as I've said, in case you already are a subscriber, that's fine also. Is there a way to increase the cost of Game Pass with the tiered structure? I really don't know. I mean, if you've got the stick, depending on the tier that you're, I don't know, subscribing to, whether it unlocks, for refresh rates and resolution. I don't know if Microsoft would go that far, really. I would just keep it as simple as possible. But then again, it is Microsoft, and anything's possible. So
it's an interesting one. I mean, I know you've said, sort of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo sort of sitting back and kind of seeing how it goes, but it kind of feels like the market's slowly getting saturated, and I guess you don't want to be in the situation where you're constantly playing catch up.
I think all at the end of the day, you've seen them spend 7.5 billion, so they know where the game is really at. You can have the best devices in the world, and we all talk about Dreamcast. It's the content that's king, and I think the real world cash is king. And if you've got the content, you can pretty much do whatever you like.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a fair point, and that's a very salient point when you say, like you say, we mention the Dreamcast all the time because technically it was underpowered in certain regards, but like you say, it came with the Sega arcade games, which for me was the absolute seller.
Things like Jet Set Radio. I mean, I just waiting for that. When are we going to see the next that kind of creativity, that kind of risk taking, that kind of wow moment? I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, Sega is still around. They're not as, like you say, not as risk taking as they once were. But Scott, I'm just a bit curious, really, because if and when this stick comes out, do you think this could potentially damage what would otherwise be hardware sales for Xbox in the fact of a sort of a Series S or even X to a certain degree? Because all of the focus is on Game Pass and stuff, and everyone's saying, well, Microsoft just want to sell the Game Pass subscriptions and stuff, which I get, I do understand, and I completely agree with. But also, there is money still to be made from Series X and Series S. There is still some quite a big markup on that, I should think, a little bit further down the line when their costs have settled and stuff. Do you think there's a danger of this Game Pass stick could actually start damaging sales from the hardware consoles potentially?
That's a bloody good question, Phlapp. I think ultimately Microsoft probably won't care. I think if you were to ask them, even if you ask Phil Spencer and Xbox now, they don't talk about hardware sales as being their primary objective or the way they determine whether Xbox is a success. I think ultimately, if you're subscribing to Game Pass, whether you've got a Series S, X, Stick, Windows, or anything, they probably don't really care. I think ultimately, though, it is going to be aimed at a different audience, as we've spoken about. So I can't see it sort of cannibalizing their hardware sales at this point. I don't think someone would look at a Series X and then a gaming stick and go, oh, actually, now the gaming stick's available, I'm going to buy that instead of the X, because it's the two different customers. So I guess the idea would be is the gaming stick would be someone who looks at Series X and goes, oh, that's too expensive, I'm not going to get one. So I don't think so, but I mean, it really depends on how the world develops and how the services develop over the coming years. Microsoft might even be in a position where they'd prefer you to buy the stick. Now that might sound weird, but let me explain a little bit. But sorry, no, you go on, Phlapp.
Well, no, that's an interesting point, because I was just thinking if they're actually doing this as part of the subscription, then there's an ongoing cost. So not only are you subscribing to Game Pass, part of that subscription's also paying for the stick, but it's obviously paying for the stick all of the time you've got your subscription set up, and you're constantly paying. So I guess with a hardware console, it's kind of a one-off payment, but with this stick, if it's a subscription, you're constantly paying for it, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at the Xbox Series X and S at the moment, it's apparent and it's widely reported that Microsoft are making a loss on both pieces of hardware, but they're obviously doing that to get Game Pass into gamers. Now with the streaming stick, I can't imagine they would be making a loss on that. If you look at something like a Fire Stick or a Chromecast, they go for about 40 quid. You can get a Fire Stick for 30 quid in the Prime deal sales that they do. So I can't imagine they're that expensive to make, especially sort of in mass production.
Well, it's a little bit like the razor thing, is it? You give the razors away, but charge through the nose for the blades. And in this case, that would be the subscription service. Yeah,
exactly. But they're not going to make the loss on the Series S or X that they're making at the moment, but they're still going to get you in as a subscriber to Game Pass. Yeah. And without the console, if you've got a Series X or S, you don't need Game Pass. You can still download and buy games with the S just digitally, or with the X digitally or physically. You don't need Game Pass. But if you've got a streaming stick, the only way that you access those games, at least at the moment, with the way that the streaming service is working, is through Game Pass. So if you buy the stick and buy Game Pass, you're in. You can't get out. There's no other method of playing games. So they've maybe got what's referred to often as a stickier customer, so to speak, where you've got to stick around if you want that content. Otherwise, that stick, unless obviously it comes with other media apps and things like that, is then sort of useless if you don't have Game Pass at that point.
Yeah, no, and to be honest, that's absolutely fine. I've just seen in the chat KSante was saying that Microsoft used to care about hardware sales until they saw Sony had locked that up. And we've obviously, we know this and we've alluded to it several times on this show already, and I completely get that. But when you actually sort of see perhaps what Microsoft saw the future as being with subscription services and things like that, then all of a sudden it makes sense to not actually count hardware sales, doesn't it? Because it all kind of falls into place, because it's not just about selling the plastic box at the end of the day. But Clownz, let's just come to you quickly, if you don't mind. So one thing that has been actually in the chat and was on my list of topics to discuss was whether we'd actually start seeing a sort of a native app built into some smart TVs, because I know Samsung in the Galaxy Note, I believe, have got the Xbox GamePass app currently preloaded and stuff. Do you think we could start seeing this on Samsung TVs as well? And if not, LG TVs?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that we'll start seeing it on some of these TVs. It only makes sense with the partnership that they have with Samsung, especially. LG, I'm not 100% sure, but anything Android based, you'll be able to sideload it.
So not on a Sony TV then?
No. But I'm sure if they have an Android base, you can sideload it, and you see people sideloading on refrigerators, on Fire Sticks. So I mean, the potential is there. And I think that Microsoft kind of knew this, making a kind of like an APK of their app. I think they saw this happening.
I find this so interesting where this is going, because, like you say, the world is their oyster almost, and people are going to get creative with this as well. Like you say, if they can sideload stuff, you're going to see it on all. Well, we've already seen it on a fridge, so people are going to get creative about where you can actually get Game Pass and stuff in the end. It's going to be quite interesting. Pux, where are we with the chat?
I haven't really got much more to add, really. A lot of people are kind of on point and agreeing and discussing what we're currently talking about. I haven't seen any particular standout comments, because any good outstanding comments I have seen, one of us has then brought up afterwards. Okay. One thing I have seen, which I would like to kind of give my own opinion on, if you don't mind, is about this. So Dragonwolf here says, what does anyone know about this platinum level Game Pass rumor? And I know you was alluding to earlier that, if this platinum Game Pass kind of thing does exist in the future, and you was correct me if I'm wrong, you was also alluding to that maybe this would also pay for your your stick. I don't know. I'm personally not convinced that a platinum will exist, and my main reason being, or especially not one in a capacity where it pays monthly for a streaming stick, because I think, as Stubbs was also alluding to in the chat, which I do agree with also, is that, and I think even Scott SX2 was also saying that the Fire Sticks and everything else are, we're talking 30 to 50, 60 odd pounds, whatever. And I can't see a kind of a Game Pass specific or whatever it is streaming stick being much more expensive than that. So my main thought is, what's the point of paying for it monthly when it's cheap enough that you could just buy it anyway?
Yeah, well, it depends on how they sweeten the deal, I suppose, and what the actual deal is, I guess. But,
the other side of the coin being that a platinum Game Pass, if it is true, because Stubbs made another good point, which I saw, is that what's the point of Ultimate then if Platinum's meant to be a higher tier, which is a very good point. And it kind of made me think, and I'm now wondering whether or not Platinum is actually a lower tier level of Game Pass, which is maybe just, as I think I was mentioning earlier, a Game Pass subscription that is really cheap and just supports your streaming stick. So maybe you're only paying $2.99 a month.
Microsoft really need to think about their naming conventions, don't they?
Yeah, because Platinum sounds really good, right? But then, what is Ultimate? As
well, you can't get better than Ultimate, surely.
Exactly, yeah.
Fair enough. No, that's cool. Thank you very much. Thank you, chat. Great comments and stuff. Kaya Santi, you're a man after my own heart. He's actually sideloaded the Game Pass app on his Sony TV and on his Oculus Quest 2. Well done. Excellent. How did that work? Let us know how it worked on your Sony TV. That'd be quite interesting. Guys, we're just going to do a very quick round, actually, and this is for the chat as well. Obviously, this rumor of a last blowout, shall we say, Microsoft event, perhaps on the 9th of November, coming along, and this peculiar lat long code that kind of pointed to New Zealand, and people talking about Gabe Newell, and we even mentioned on last week's show, didn't we, about Valve could be a potential thing, and I know it's been mentioned elsewhere, and it's a thing that could exist. What do we make of it? Do we think there's any rumours in this Valve thing, or what do we make of the New Zealand thing? Are we looking too much into it, or Microsoft being quite cryptic here? We'll get to you, Scott, if you don't mind on that one. What do you think?
Yeah, the New Zealand thing's interesting because it kind of lines up with maybe similar posts from the Xbox Mexico account, if I believe, for something happening on November 9th. Yeah, thank you very much. But New Zealand have been talking about it as freely as they possibly can, in the sense of they're saying they're telling people it's not certain things. They've said it's sort of specifically for local people, but then people have been tying that up with the fact that Gabe Newell was talking about moving Valve to New Zealand and how the two might link up. It's crazy how these sort of rumors really just snowball and escalate and develop quite quickly. Ultimately, I don't think the New Zealand event are going to be too much. I think they'll maybe be local sort of fan festy type events. Obviously, New Zealand is one of the few countries in the world that have handled the COVID pandemic rather well, where they've got people going to concerts, going to sporting events and large crowds that we unfortunately aren't in a position to do so. And Microsoft had just had their digital fan fest event. It might actually still be ongoing. I can't remember. So maybe it's something along those lines, but a more physical event. I think we will see something prior to launch at some point in very early November, as maybe and maybe an XO event. I know some people have spoken about, will we get an XO 20 this year, and what will that look like? It'll be interesting to see if they do what Microsoft show, because we've got the Game Awards coming up early December as well, I think that is. And it'll be interesting to see, right, what do they show at XO if there is an event, and what do they hold back for the Game Awards, if they do hold anything back for the Game Awards at all. Obviously, they showed off the Series X at the Game Awards last year, so it's obvious Microsoft values that show and its audience. People were talking about, are we going to see Halo again for the first time since July and November, which I don't think will be the case personally.
You don't?
No, I don't think so. I think that'll be next year at this point. I think they won't show that until it's absolutely ready at this point. They can't really risk another backlash, I think, at this point. So I think we'll see something. I think it may just be, I don't think it'll be anything at the level of maybe the July event. You know, that was obviously a very highly produced event. But I think we'll see something. I mean, we might even see something tomorrow. Obviously, Mondays have become Xbox Mondays as of late. So it might just be something small. But I don't see anything in these rumors with Valve personally. I think those are just being blown out of proportion at this point. But then again, had you asked me about Bethesda a couple of weeks ago, I would have said absolutely no chance. Exactly. So it seems anything's on the table at this point. But yeah, I think maybe people are just putting 2 and 2 together and getting maybe 406 or something at this point.
And to be honest, like you say, the Bethesda thing's rattled people, and we don't quite know which way's up at the moment with regards to that kind of thing. So Luke Steele's put quite a good comment. Actually, the New Zealand thing just appears to be a launch event, because obviously it's the first place in the world, so that would kind of make sense. I kind of get that. Clownz, do you think we've got anything, any huge news left to come between now and the November the 10th, or are they going to kind of play it casual?
It's really hard to say what they're going to announce. I'm hoping they're announcing another studio acquisition.
You still think that's on the cards?
I still think that's in the cards. Yeah, I still do. I'm not sure if it's really hard to say, because there's a lot of good studios out there that they could still buy. As for Steam, I really think something's going on with Steam. If you notice, if you notice on your Xbox app, there was an update.
Yes, you can link your account to Steam.
Yep. So I think they're going to have some type of crossover. I was hoping for a complete Microsoft buyout, which I've actually been saying for the last 3 years. And the only reason why I say that is because I feel like if Microsoft was to buy Steam, they can incorporate it into the Xbox ecosystem properly onto the consoles. And imagine like just sitting at your TV and not having to use Steam Link or their Steam app and just playing it like on your console, and it works perfectly. Like they match up the games with controllers and keyboard and mouse separately, and they combine achievements somehow with Steam cards. Imagine all the possibilities with that, and then a better chat application. You could bring your Steam friends into Xbox Party Chat, and you guys can sit there and play some PC gaming. I mean, because the Xbox Series X, let's face it, is as powerful as you need to play any type of PC game right now. I'm not going to go crazy and go get like a 3080 or anything. So all you 3080 PC Master Race hardcores, no, I'm not talking to you guys. I'm just talking to the console guys saying that, hey, the Series X is powerful enough to play really decent PC games at high frame rates. It's got the capabilities of doing it, and why not incorporate Steam into that and put a Steam app on that? And if it works well, why not incorporate that to the Game Pass Ultimate app and then put that in the cloud as well? Maybe you could play some Steam games that are small on the go on the Xbox Cloud app. It's a strong possibility. I think there's something there. I mean, Gabe does like Microsoft. He does favor the Xbox ecosystem. And, there's rumors that he was looking to retire. There was rumors at first that he was looking to move to Valve to New Zealand, and then he changed his mind and he just wants to move to New Zealand. So maybe on that call with Jeff Keighley and Phil Spencer, there was some talk of some type of incorporation. Is it a full buyout? I can't be 100% sure, but I think there's some type of deal in the works, and it would add only value to Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah, and you know what I said earlier. If every word is meticulously placed that Phil Spencer says. That's also true of Microsoft marketing. So the fact Jeff Keighley came out with that comment does allude to the fact that there is something going on, doesn't there? In my mind.
Well, I mean, look at it this way, okay? I'm not a big fan of Jeff Keighley, only because I don't think that he should be hosting anything when he obviously favors something publicly outright, right? So maybe he's trying to warn his buddies at PlayStation, hey, Microsoft's got to deal with Steam. You guys need to step up your game. And like, oh, crap, we only got 92 million market cap. Oh, we're done, guys. We're screwed. Let's buy like some small indie studio and call it a day. I mean, maybe Jeff Keighley was sending out smoke signals.
Well, we've mentioned Valve a few times, but the thing that I think one of the reasons I think Microsoft would want to partner with Valve or own Valve is because of Vive, to have a pre-built VR headset, because, obviously, again, we had some leaked code that was data mined from the Flight Sim Xbox app, that there was some VR code in there, I believe, for the Series X. that's quite interesting. And obviously, you know, unless Microsoft are going to do their own VR from the very, you know, from the beginning, a buyout of something that already exists seems the obvious choice to me personally.
Yeah, and look at all the power that Steam has. Look how many people are on Steam. Look how many more people into the ecosystem it would bring from the PC genre over to, you know, a bigger Xbox ecosystem. So it would be a huge get for Microsoft and Xbox to incorporate all those people, because a lot of those people are PC Master Race people, right? And then all of a sudden now they're in the Xbox ecosystem. Now, you know what I mean? It's a great way to get them into the ecosystem, whether they like it or not.
No, absolutely. Well, that would be interesting. VJ, have we still got something big left to come, do you think, in your opinion?
I would hope for a decent refresher.
Go on.
A decent refresher of everything we've seen so far.
Okay.
I know we've sort of contemplated about, is it going to be Ubisoft or Valve, and I've done that so many times now.
Yeah.
Sick of it. But I think that you've got to look at all the studios that they've got already under their hood and what they've been working on. And I think it also is going to dovetail in terms of how much hardware that they've got coming up and available. And I'd strategically plan, you know, sort of a launch event. But and I think that there might be subsequent events when they have a huge amounts of hardware available as well, to coincide with, to help, you know, marketing and sales. So I think what I would want is to have a decent refresher, and we've seen a lot of titles from them. We've seen bits and pieces as well. I guess the Senua Saga is an easy, a low-hanging fruit, shall we say, in terms of seeing a little bit more before launch. And I think both Sony and Microsoft, I can't remember historically if they do something like a presentation showcase as a recap just before the launches. I don't know if that's historically what's done.
That's a good question. I don't remember that happening. No. Chat will probably help, but yeah.
No, and I remember something on the PlayStation blog, you know, and I pointed it out as well. Like, here's one last look, you know, on their last presentation before launch. So I don't know if they have anything planned.
Well, that's a good point, because obviously since the July showcase to launch, they've acquired Bethesda and all of the studios and games that come with that. So yeah, it is quite a good idea just to say, don't forget, we've got all of this coming in the future. This is the exciting future of Xbox. You know,
exactly. Some sort of refresher, some sort of montage, something just to refresh everybody's memories, and then just keep your powder dry as and when it's strategically needed. I mean, if they know they're telling everyone that they've they've pre-sold everything so far that they've shipped to retailers. We don't know how many more units that they're going to have available on day one. And if they've got 1 million or 2 million units and they're concerned, then they may do something. If they don't really have a substantial amount of units and they think, look, this supply situation is going to struggle until March, then let's just keep our powder dry, you know. Okay. I think it's something that they've got to work in tandem between several divisions.
Yeah.
Just don't know where everything is at the moment, especially with COVID and so on and so forth. And so basically for me, it's a reminder for people that are looking to go and buy new hardware. And again, if it's available, right, then I think they'll definitely do something. But I think, as I said, a refresher would be fantastic, and a glimpse into the future. Yeah, always goes down well, right? As a little bit of detail. So I know you definitely want that, Phlapp. I can just hear you heavy breathing.
No, that's a great idea. No, to be honest, when you come up with it, it's like, that is a fantastic idea, and I want to see what we've already seen, just even a little bit more, or just some more narrative around it and stuff. It's a great idea. Yeah. Fun Speculations put a couple of things in there. We've, like you said, we still got Hellblade 2. We need to see more of, and the Compulsion game reveal as well. There's still lots of stuff we still haven't seen yet. We've got obviously Initiative and all kinds of stuff. We now know what the Coalition have been working on, because obviously there's a Series X DLC for Gears 5 coming, which is quite exciting. I don't think anyone saw that coming, to be honest. Pux, let's round off the show, my friend. What do you think we've got left to see between now and November the 9th?
I'm still of the belief that we might see something relating to Steam. And it's small things like what you just mentioned about Flight Simulator. You know, data miners have found links to VR code in the source and all the rest of it. And it kind of, and there's a few other things I've read online as well, which make me believe that there might be something going on. And I know for a while now, we've spoken a lot and been very vocal about why would Microsoft develop their own VR headset when they could just borrow someone else's.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was going to be Facebook at first with Oculus, because I know Microsoft have a small % stake in Facebook. That seemed the obvious choice, but now Valve's on the table. It's like,
Well, interesting. Oh, sorry, go on, VJ.
Wasn't there an announcement a little while back that there was a partnership between Valve, Microsoft, and Hewlett Packard in developing a VR headset?
Oh, no, I'm not aware of that. That's an interesting point.
I'll look it up, because that is one partnership that, and it was just around when Sony patent was floating around. I just don't remember, but it definitely is something. So you can find it online.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, sorry. I'll carry on. God, where was I? Oh yeah, VR. So, I've lost my train of thought now.
You're talking about data mining in the. Well, you still think there's something in the Valve buyout?
Oh, that was it. Yeah, no, because you was mentioning about Oculus and why you thought that was a deal there, but then very recently, I think it was about a month ago now, Facebook / Oculus kind of announced that to use the Oculus in the future after some date in November, I believe, all Oculus users need to link or all new Oculus users need to link their Facebook accounts to the Oculus ecosystem to use it. And of course, this has got a lot of people kind of erring on the side of caution, like, why the hell do I need to link my own personal Facebook page of all my contacts just to use a VR machine? And I think that's got a lot of people potentially jumping ship to the Vive and Valve headsets. And I'm now wondering whether or not, maybe that's a reason why Microsoft, if this is all true, of course, why they might be doing that. But then another point I would like to raise, actually, something I was thinking about as well as you guys were talking, is like way back, I think 2014, whenever it was, when the first Oculus, headsets all came out, or whenever it was, early in the kind of early mid 2010s. I had a long period of time, when I thought, you know what, I think VR, this is now VR's time to shine, and I can see this now growing, and people like Google were jumping on the trend with Google Cardboard, and they kind of had their own initiative there. I did
give that a go, actually. It was quite fun.
Yeah, it's easy for people to kind of mock and laugh at that, but it was a very, very cheap way for people to just experience a bit of VR, even though it's not great, because obviously you need to have certain proper refresh rates for each eye and all that kind of stuff on the technical side of things. But now, the more I kind of think about it, and even the more we talk about it, I am no longer convinced that VR is the future anymore. I'm not sure if actually all along it was just a niche, a very expensive niche, which actually doesn't have a lot of support. I mean, when you look at the Steam figures, because for kind of user acquisitions, all that kind of Steam numbers that they kind of gather, I think given the kind of tens of millions of Steam users, I think it's like less than 5% of people have a headset, or at least a Vive headset.
Yeah.
So it does make me wonder whether or not, has VR kind of missed its moment to kind of shine, and actually people don't care about it anymore. And to the point, is VR viable for Xbox?
Well, I think it's certainly viable, particularly from a hardware perspective, obviously.
I'm on about from is it worth it?
Yeah. Well, the only argument I would put to that is the fact if Sony are actually considering their second generation version of VR headset for the PS5, then they obviously think it's worth it. I know that doesn't necessarily automatically mean it's going to be worth it for Microsoft, but it does point to the fact that, obviously Sony think it's possibly worth it and probably part of the future. And, the little Oculus Quests and stuff, they are selling. I don't know.
I know they are cheaper kind of barriers to entry, but they're still not super cheap. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think from what I've seen online, like the VR headsets to get are the ones which kind of match or are more expensive than a next gen console. So it kind of does make me wonder, why would you fork out so much money for just a headset when you can buy about 3 Series X or 2.5 Series X's with it?
Or perhaps if you was to be able to buy that on all access, it would make it a much more palatable purchase.
Or
imagine that.
You've just made me think as well, how about if this Platinum Game Pass thing is true, maybe it's not linked to the TV stick and actually you're paying off a Microsoft VR headset.
Wow, exactly. The potential's there for it, isn't it? Like I say, all access opens up all kinds of doors, particularly for expensive pieces of hardware.
And I've just seen in the chat, sorry, that Sparhawk in the chat has just said that the Oculus Quest is always stays sold out. So maybe I do stand corrected there. Maybe the VR headsets are actually more popular than they are. But then again, the other side of that same coin is are they sold out because not many are being manufactured? I mean, there's so many different ways you could look at this, I think. And unfortunately, I'm really sorry. I don't know official numbers, so I can't prove right or wrong.
Hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later what Microsoft's up to. I still think something's going on. Whether they will, announce it before launch or whatever. And like VJ said, I think it may depend on the amount of consoles that they feel they can sell on the back of it, because they're not stupid. They're going to use, they're going to maximize the marketing potential they can out of any announcement like that. Remains to be seen. But well, that kind of wraps up the show, everyone. I mean, wow, what a show we've had. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to start off by thanking the chat. Guys, you've been absolutely phenomenal tonight. Again, broke records tonight. It's always great to break records and stuff. It really does make what we do up here feel worthwhile and valued, to be honest. So really appreciate you guys being in the chat. Thank you so much. We'll just do a very quick round of thank yous to the panel and guests, because again, without you guys, you bring the fire every week, and you make every topic, that much more interesting, because we go down many different avenues with all of the different opinions that we get. So we're doing reverse order on the screen, if you don't mind. So Scott, starting with you, thank you for being here. It's always been a pleasure, and second time back. Hopefully we'll have you back again soon if you're willing. But where can we find you on the socials?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me back, Phlapp. I guess to Phlapp, Pux, and VJ, obviously, great to chat with you. Clownz, it was great to chat with you for the first time as well. Before I plug my Twitter, I guess I'll just ask anyone who's in chat maybe to like and subscribe to your channel.
Thank you.
I think what you guys are bringing is fantastic, and I think you guys obviously just hit 500 plus subs, I believe, and
yes, we turned 500.
Yeah, you just deserve more. So hopefully everyone who hasn't already, please like and subscribe to the channel, because what you guys do is fantastic. If you do want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at SX2 Gaming. I would really appreciate a follow if you can. But that's me. Thank you very much for having me on again. And it's been a pleasure, and would love to join you guys again if you'd like to have me in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And you heard the guy. And follow him on Twitter. It's always good to build the community, and it's always great to be able to link people that we've seen in the chat and then have sort of offline conversations on Twitter and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Clownz, thank you for being here, my friend. I know you host your own podcast, Four Guys with Quarters, and VJ's on that show as well. So let's plug your show. Where can we find you?
You could find me on all social media at Italian Clownz. You could find me on Tuesdays, Four Guys with Quarters with VJ and Midway Monster. And I'll always say this, that I think VJ is the most intellectual man in the gaming sphere. There's nothing that he does not know. He researches everything very well. He's one of my favorite people to listen to. I love what he has to say. And you can find me on Game Beyond the Box on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. and Primetime Gaming on Mondays at 8. And now Mad's Gaming Next Gen podcast as well on Mondays. I believe that's at 3 p.m.
You're a busy guy. He was almost as busy as VJ, but not quite. Well, thanks for being here. Very much appreciate you coming tonight, and obviously a bit of a delayed start, but we got there in the end. VJ, again, thank you very much for being here, my friend. I know you're a busy chap on the podcast, and every topic must seem like you've discussed it a million times before. So I really appreciate you. You're still bringing a fresh perspective. I don't know how you do it, in all honesty, because, like you say, we discuss quite a lot of these topics in similar ways over the various podcasts that you do, but you always make it really fresh, my friend. So I appreciate that. Where can we find you?
Just to say thanks to Clownz. I wish I did know everything. I'm still struggling to figure out my inside leg measurement, but thank you for having me on your show each week, Clownz. It's much appreciated. And I really got the pleasure of actually sitting opposite Dealer, which I thought might never happen, but there you go. And Clownz made it happen. So thank you so much. And SX, every time I hear SX, and I mean this in a really nice way, so after sometimes if I'm not concentrating, I think I've got Dennis Taylor on.
I wish I knew who Dennis Taylor was, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Never mind. He's a snooker player. So I used to watch a lot of snooker.
Used to be a snooker player, yeah.
Yeah, used to be, yeah. Those classes. But But yeah, no, Phlapp, again, thanks for having me on, and Puxley. It's never quite the same without Puxley, and I hope he hasn't got any other holidays booked, because Cornwall's, I'm going to close it off permanently. If I have my way.
Yeah.
And you can find me at Viewpoint Gaming, and you can find me on Clownz Show, and then I'm on Boom Show on Thursdays, and obviously I'm with Get Well Soon Stubbs Gaming on the evenings. So yeah, it is pretty packed, and but yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, Phlapp, and yeah, I'll come on as long as you need me. No problem.
Yeah, no problem. No, you're very welcome. In fact, funny enough, I did see some photos of Stubbs's scars. Yeah, that was quite severe, wasn't it? I wasn't quite expecting that, if I'm honest. I wasn't expecting staples and stuff. But,
well, a few people in the chat know Dennis Taylor and they're laughing, but it's a compliment. He achieved something remarkable by winning the World Championship against Steve Davis, but being so far behind. Anyway, won't digress. So, yeah.
I've done VJ. Puxley, thank you very much for being here and being my wingman. As always, it's always a pleasure. Where can we find you on the socials?
Yeah, no worries. Always enjoyed doing this, as you well know. I'll do my usual spiel, I'm afraid. I know a lot of people have heard this every week already, but I'm aware we have a number of new people in the or tuning into the show. So thank you to those new to the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. So we actually do have a Facebook page as well as a Twitter handle as well. So of course on Twitter you can find us at GamePass Gaming. We have a Facebook page for those who don't want or don't like to use Twitter, and you can just search for GamePass Gaming on Facebook. And we also have a Xbox Club community on the Xbox Club service as well. And you can find that both on console and PC. And this is something where, as it begins to grow in the future, especially when the new systems come out, we'll definitely like to play some games of you guys and potentially host tournaments in the future. So that's something that we'd like to do. So you can search for GamePass Gaming on Xbox Clubs as well. And as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at PuxleyAR. And you can also find me on Xbox as just Puxley as well.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we are looking to grow the Xbox channel, the Xbox group. So please join that if you can. Friend us, and we'll send you an invite to that. We are trying to build the numbers first, and then we're going to do something quite special with that if we can pull that off. But excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the chat. As I said before, you've been phenomenal. Thank you to the panel. I'm Phlapp. You can find me at Phlapp2 on Twitter or at GamePass Gaming. And that's been this show. So thank you very much for being here with us, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.